What is up? I am Mechabrickman, and today I'm going to be talking about the Colossal Black Knight. And no, I don't mean this little guy. I mean this big old thing. Well, first things first, let's talk about this dude's legs. So, the legs design start mainly with the feet most of the time. So for instance, this guy, I have a design that uses pistons in a way, and ball joints and friction to be able to hold this guy up. So I've used this design many times, usually in models like this guy, this size, or guys this size, because they need the strength to be able to hold up the legs. If it was just a ball joint, it'd topple over. So I came up with this design that has some friction that I actually took from Bionicles back in the day. There were some models that used to have things like that size, that needed to be held up. So I revamped it and used it for my mechs. And for this big guy, I ended up having to redesign it again, but tenfold. So that's why there are 3 different attachment points for all the ball joints. So I can have rotation. And click his legs out. Hammer. There we go. So it can, that's about as far as he can go. But it still holds him and he's sturdy. And for that same style, what I decided to do was kind of use that for the knees as well. So for the knees, I didn't want to go all the way to the point where I have to use giant gears. Because giant gears, I didn't have any of. And I didn't want to buy a bunch and make it that size. So I ended up using ratcheted joints. And I used 4 per knee. And then another one of these for the back. Now it limits motion, but that's okay because this guy isn't really meant to do crazy poses, but he can at least get into a partial walking pose if I wanted. All right. Now for the hips were probably one of the hardest things to design on this big guy, because I wanted to be able to have rotation at the legs best I could. At least I'm gonna take the ball joint off for now to show, because I wanted him to be able to have his legs move out this way. I also wanted to be able to have his legs move out forward. So without using gears, again, I didn't want to go that far. I ended up using a ton more of these ratcheted pieces. So all in all in this thing, I think I counted there's like 30 ratcheted joints or something like that, these big old ones. And there's 4 in the front, 4 in the back, right here. And a lot of engineering to be able to get the 2 pieces to connect the way they do. But ultimately it allows for him to be able to get into some cool poses. All right, so next, how I decided I wanted to do the body, because a lot of the times I like to make torsos that rotate, such as on this guy, torso rotates, because I really like to have articulation. But when it came to this guy, I tried originally having a single Technic axle through the middle and some engineering with some gearing and stuff like that to hold up the whole body and still allow rotation. And that was a dumb idea, because when I did that originally, it just broke, it fell over, and I had to rebuild the whole thing. And this thing I've worked on since, I want to say I've been working on this guy for about 6 months. He has gone through many different changes. But ultimately, I'm finally happy with him. But without taking him apart, there are now 4 Technic axles, all situated throughout the base here, one on each corner of his torso, that go all the way through and hold all the way up to right here. Because without that rigidity and that strength, it would topple over like it has before. Now, what is a giant mech without a cockpit? And so that's where I decided, in this chest, that's where the pilot's gonna go. Now, I know there could probably be a little bit more detail in here, but ultimately I was just happy to be able to fit the fig and a somewhat interesting looking chair. Now, for the shoulders, I unfortunately wasn't able to get away from the giant gears, but ultimately I'm happy that I went with it because it works now. Because originally I had it with very weak Technic. I actually had it with just one single of these pieces flat up against here, and then that was the rotation. Like, rotated on, I think, an axle, and was held in with one pin, and it just, the arm just would not hold up because this thing is, so in total this whole thing weighs 9 pounds, and for one of the arms it's at least a couple pounds, and so it just wouldn't hold. So I re-engineered it probably like, I don't know, 10 times or something like that, and now, along with a lot of gearing, the arm can be held up. It was such a fun mechanism that I was like, you know what, I'm gonna leave some of it at least exposed, because when these move, it actually kind of looks like it's, you know, it reminds me of Pacific Rim, and that's a huge inspiration for this build. Now, when it came to the question of how do I want to make sure that the arm can rotate and keep strong, but at the same time be sleek and look nice, I actually turned to install the mechanism from the Monkey King set from Lego itself. The mechanism that they had for the arm was actually this ball joint and some gearing that moved through. And I was able to steal it and put it on this guy to make his elbow. That actually worked out pretty nicely. And then for the rest of his arm, it's just, this piece can come off. Okay, not all of it can come off, but some of it can come off. Still working on weapon designs. But then just a ball joint at the wrist. And for the hand, I wanted to have him basically have like brass knuckles, essentially. Maybe 1, 2, 3, and 4. And have an open palm. Now, of course, it also needs to be able to lift its arm. So, with 4 ratchets again, just like the legs, you can lift his arm. And actually, as I showed in one of the shorts that I made, because of all that mechanism and everything, he's strong enough to hold up one of the little mechs that I make. And to help this big guy so he doesn't slide around, both feet have 3 tires, just like some of the other Lego mechs and stuff like that have. When they're larger, they need a little more friction, because, I mean, I don't know how many times I've built some of these guys and the legs just kind of do the splits and then they fall over, which happens often. So, to help with this guy, I put 3 tires on the bottom. And last but not least is the head. The head is actually held on only by one single ball joint. Doesn't have too much range of motion, but at least enough to move the head back, forth, and a little bit of down, and not really up. Not really any up. But that's okay. And the inspiration for this guy, a lot of people I've seen on TikTok have said, you know, Noisy Boy or some of the mechs on Real Steel are inspiration from this, and definitely partially, but in all honesty, the Tree Sentinel armor from Elden Ring is what kind of inspired me to build something like this. And then of course I'm a fan of Spartans, and I had to have a faceplate made out of gold, because the whole thing is black, red, a little bit of red accent, and then gold for the faceplate. But yeah. So there is a lot of inspiration that went into this guy, from all the way from Pacific Rim to Gundam to Elden Ring for some of the knight design and stuff like that. But all in all, definitely the biggest mech I've ever made, and probably the biggest I'm going to be making for a long time. Because this guy has, I want to say, 4,000 to 5,000 pieces, and he weighs 9 pounds. And then height from feet to the top of his plume, I would say he's, I think I measured a little over 2 feet, something like that. But let's do a comparison. So here's a look at size comparison between a little minifigure to a little mech to a city piece to another mech that I've created, and the big guy. He definitely towers above all of it. Here he is next to a giant pirate ship, still quite a lot bigger. And here he is next to the Ninjago City Gardens. Not quite as tall, but definitely beefy. So, tell me what you guys think. Love it, whether you love it, whether you hate it, whether you just don't give a damn. I don't really care. I want to hear it all. But I'm gonna keep building mechs, and there's plenty more to come. Bye for now.